overlay on these nails. And you guys might be wondering what the heck is the difference between an overlay and a regular gel polish manicure. An overlay is when we actually create more of a semi-permanent or permanent layer of product over the natural nail that we're going to work on top of. So rather than applying gel polish and soaking it off every time, we're going to basically apply a protective layer to the natural nail, and that way we can change the color on top of that rather than having to remove all of the gel polish. This is exactly why I had you guys practice removing just layers of gel polish color in my previous videos. So this is really going to come in handy. So instead of having to soak off gel nails, you're going to be able to just remove the color on top of the gel overlay that you create. All right, so I'm going to start this overlay service by just pushing back the cuticles right before I apply the product. These nails have already been prepped, but I just like to tuck the skin back one last time before I start to apply gel because it just makes everything look that much cleaner. And it just makes sure any little dust, debris, or skin is out of the way. I also did an IBX treatment on these nails prior to doing this overlay, so if you guys want to see how to do that, definitely watch my previous video on IBX. I'm going to be using a soak off builder gel. This is a nice option because it does have flexibility and you do have the option to soak it off. So both the base and the builder gel I'm using today are a soak off product. So I'm starting with the gel base coat and I'm just going to apply a thin layer to all of the nails. If you haven't watched my video about gel base coat, I highly recommend you go back and watch that. It's going to explain a lot about what I'm doing and the importance of really putting pressure on the nail while you're applying your base coat. Since I'm going to be doing an overlay, I don't need a lot of base coat on the nail, but I do want to ensure I have enough product to allow for any shrinking that's going to happen with the gel. Make sure that it's going to cure properly. The base coat is absolutely where we start to create that adhesion with the natural nails. So we want to take our time with the base coat to make sure it's properly applied. If there's something wrong between the natural nail and the base coat, then nothing that you put on top is going to matter. It's just like having a bad foundation on a house. You want to make sure that your foundation on the natural nail, which is our base coat, is properly applied and properly cured. So I just go through making sure that I work that gel into the nail plate and also ensuring that there's enough product on the natural nail. You can flash cure in between nails if you're doing this on yourself. If you want to make sure, if you're happy with your application, you want to make sure the base coat's not going to move on you. All products are different. Each gel base coat that's out there has a different viscosity. It might run a little bit more than what you see me doing. So if you want a little bit more control, definitely feel free to flash cure the nails, which means cure them just for a few seconds to start that polymerization process. It'll help make sure that the gel doesn't continue to move while you're working on the other fingers, and you won't waste a full 30 seconds on every single nail while you're applying. So flash curing is a really great technique to give yourself control, but also not add a bunch of time to your application. And as I go, I'm just checking with my reflection to make sure that the shine of the base coat goes all the way to the sidewall of the nail. I want to make sure the natural nail is completely covered from cuticle to free edge, from sidewall to sidewall. So using your reflection is a really great way to make sure you've got gel where you think you do. There's no blank areas. The natural nail is matte, the gel is shiny, so we can use that difference to be able to identify where the gel is. This is probably one of the few times you'll see the bristles on my brush fan out like this because I am putting pressure on the natural nail. I really want to work this adhesive base coat into the nail while I'm working. And I can come backwards over the free edge if there's any areas where it's a little bit short or I want to cap the free edge but I don't want to touch the skin. And you'll see that in my gel base coat video. So I've cured all 4 nails, and then I like to do thumbs separately, mainly because as you can see, the whole hand is turned to the side. So if any of that gel was not cured on the other 4 fingers, it's going to be moving. It might be slipping into the pinky on the sidewall. So I usually like to cure all 4 fingers, and then I move to the thumbs and cure the thumbs. You can cure the whole hand again if you want to. You're really not going to overdo it by over curing by 30 seconds. And again, I come backwards on the natural nail, come over that free edge, especially on the inner corners of thumbs. Thumbs take a beating. We use them a lot. So we want to make sure the corners are completely capped and that we're doing our very best to completely coat this natural nail in gel base coat. So I'm using my reflection, checking the sides. And I can see there's a little spot right here very close to the sidewall, so I want to pull that base coat down just ever so slightly. All right, so while the nails are curing, I am going to pull out the soak off base coat I was talking about. This is a really great option for those of you that don't want the permanency of hard gel. And I'm just going to squeegee off the excess base coat I had on my brush before I move forward. I do have a video specifically on gel brushes, so if you want to see how you can better take care of your brushes and how to use them properly, definitely watch that. So I'm going to pick up just a small amount of that soak off builder gel on my brush. And right now what I'm doing is a wetting layer. So I just want to get the whole nail wet with gel. You'll also hear me refer to this as a slip layer. Essentially what this does is it allows me to have control over the application of this gel. I can get it really close to the skin, but it also makes the nail wet with gel. So if I put a little bit more gel on the nail to maybe create a little apex or to smooth it out more, that gel is going to now self-level because it has gel on the nail already. So a slip layer or a wetting layer is a great technique that I've used in previous videos that allows you to apply gel and get it to self-level for you. Makes the application much easier. So you can see I'm trying to create a little mini apex on the nails and really make sure that they're nice and smooth from all angles. So just doing the slip layer first over the whole entire nail plate with a little bit of wet gel. You'll notice I'm not applying it like nail polish. I'm actually tickling the gel, pulling it in certain places, manipulating it. With gel, it's not nail polish. It absolutely can be pushed around, pulled around. And then now that I have that slip layer, I can add a little bit more product right in the areas. I typically like to apply gel right down the center of the nail with a concentration in the center. I call this the mohawk usually because it does look like a little bit of a mohawk running down the center of the nail. But this arc that we create really helps to create strength on the natural nail. So if we're going to go through the whole process of creating an overlay, we really want to do a good job of improving the natural shape and strength of the nails that we're working on. I can also make them a little bit more curved, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing as I work. And then I use my reflection again. You can see those lines reflecting on the nail. I want to make sure that those lines are perfectly smooth all the way down the nail. So you can see where there's a little bit of a dip. I can fix that with my brush, just pull the gel ever so slightly so that those lines end up being perfectly straight. That lets me know that the nail is perfectly smooth without me actually having to touch it or look at it. Now I'm looking down the barrel just to make sure that I have the product centered. And then just give it a second to self-level. You'll see those lines go from wavy to much more straight. And then you can cure. So I just proceed in the same way through all the nails. And each finger on each person is going to be completely different. As we get closer to the more dominant fingers, like middle fingers, pointer fingers, and thumbs, sometimes you may want to add a little bit more product on those nails. Pinkies and ring fingers don't usually take that much of a beating. So if we want to really create a nice overlay that's going to create strength for our client, sometimes we add a little bit more product on those nails, specifically on the pointer, thumb, and middle finger. Also, if the client has certain nails that are flatter than others, I can add more of an apex on those nails to give it a really nice shape. And you can see those lines of the reflection on the nail. I use those to make sure that the nail is smooth. I just barely make contact with the gel to pull it into certain areas, and then I like to check my work from the sides and also down the barrel. Flash curing is a great idea when you're doing this. It helps you lock in that shape that you just created. And if you can get it perfect from the point of application, then why not lock it in and save that perfect nail? It's going to save you a lot of time not having to retouch it, repull it, remove it. So these nails are going to be awesome because they've already got the IBX treatment inside of the actual natural nail. then they're going to have an overlay over the top. So this is going to be able to really protect the beauty of these natural nails, allow them to grow, and also allow my job to be a little bit easier when the client wants to switch colors. So again, I can do a little mohawk of gel down the center, let it self-level. And I really encourage you to give the gel a second to do what it's going to do. A lot of people, when they start working with gel, they just keep touching the gel, they just keep playing with it, and they also use really, really tiny amounts of product because they're worried about it running all over the place. Use a little bit more gel than you feel comfortable with. Barely touch the nail, don't press into it, and just allow that gel to self-level. You can see how nicely it's starting to self-level in the center. And then I need a little bit more product here on the sides. If there's not enough product, the gel is not going to be able to self-level. So I can just barely touch it, give it the opportunity to self-level a little bit more. And I'm really taking my time to show you guys, how much you can change the nail just by applying a little bit more gel and allowing it to self-level. Okay, last but not least, the thumb. Like I said, thumbs take a real beating. Usually people's thumbs also have natural ridging, much more so than the other fingers. So this nail, I'm going to add a little bit more product, just like you saw me do in my gel polish manicure video a few weeks back. So I'm going to create a nice wet layer. You can see how lumpy it is when you apply it like that. This is how people normally apply gel, is they just push into the gel like this with a very high angle on their brush. And then you end up with a height at the cuticle area, a dip in the center, and a big lump at the free edge. So if you want to practice this, squeegee off all the gel that you just did, and I'll show you how to do this the right way. So we can squeegee off that gel without wasting it, put it back in our jar. This is a very common mistake that people make. So let's start with just a wet layer of product. Use a small amount, pull it all the way through the nail. Okay, and now we've got a nice thin coating. We're going to take a bead of gel on our brush, a little bit more product than we think we need. And rather than shoving it onto the nail, I'm just going to make contact with that wetting layer. So you'll see if I just barely touch the gel onto that wet layer, you'll see that the gel starts to self-level, and now I've made contact with it, and I can just barely flow over the product and pull that gel down where I want it. You'll notice how much smoother this ends up being rather than pushing into the product like you're painting nail polish. It's already self-leveling in the center. I see perfectly straight lines in my reflection. And then on the sides, if I need to add a little bit more product, I can. But look how smooth that is just from that initial application of product, and I didn't even do anything to it. Much better than before. So right here on the side, I can see a seam. So I just want to add a little bit more product. Again, I just barely make contact with the gel, and then I can float over that product and my brush will pull it where I want it to go. So I'm just barely using the tip of my brush to make contact with that product. It's just like icing a cake. We don't want to smush into the cake. We just want to barely flow over. And the gel will do the work for us when it comes to self-leveling. You can also do little touches here and there just to deposit some product and pull it where you want it. Give it a second to self-level. You can make little adjustments. And then look how nice and glossy and smooth that is in the reflection. Okay, so I've cured all of these nails. You can see how awesomely smooth this thumb is. And from the side, we've added a little bit of an apex, which is really nice. This apex right here is going to actually add strength to this nail. And a lot of people ask me about apexes. We're going to go over that in the next several videos when we get into extensions. But apexes are essentially arches on top of the nail that help us add strength. So if we look down the barrel, we've got an arch across the top. And then also from the side, we have the arch from cuticle to free edge. So those two arches are really going to create an awesome amount of strength and protection on the natural nail and give it a nice shape as well. I'm going to clean these nails with gel cleanser. I do have a video on how to make gel cleanser if you're curious about what I use. Just going to go through and clean side to side and pulling downward. I don't want to rub that uncured inhibition layer into the skin, so I just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle right on the nail plate and pull down. I also move the wipe around so that I'm not using the same tacky part of the wipe on the finger. And if you need more cleanser, you can add more. Starting with the small finger is also a great idea, so you have less inhibition layer on the wipe by the time you get to the thumb. Okay, so nice and clean nails here. Now, honestly, you could probably go ahead with your color application, but I want to show you guys how to finish file these because I know a lot of you are going to probably have a couple issues with the smoothness. So let's finish file these nails before we put our color on. There's a couple options. You can use a bit. This is a ceramic bit, a fine ceramic bit. You can use also a mandrel with a sanding band. I would recommend fine or medium on your sanding band. I'm going to use the ceramic today just to show you guys something a little bit different. So I've got my bit almost all the way up on my machine. Again, I like to use a very high speed and a super light touch. And there's not a lot to do on this nail, but I'm just going to go through and just make sure it's perfectly smooth. So as I work through, I can use the tip of this particular shape. This is like a football shape, and I really like it because it's got a really narrow tip that I can get up close to the cuticle area or the sidewalls. And then it has more of a flatter shape through the belly of the bit that allows me to go through. So you can see it allows me to take off any lumps or bumps. I'm also going to show you guys how to hand file today. Hand filing, I actually really like it. It's quick, it's easy, and you can do the free edge and the body of the nail at the same time. It depends on what I'm doing, but sometimes I'll use bits, sometimes I'll do a hand file depending on how much work there is to do. So I just go through looking for low spots, really careful around the cuticle area. I don't want to cut anybody. I do use light pressure. And I pull the skin back as I'm working so I can get into the sidewall without cutting my client. So the apex in the center, I want to leave that mainly alone, so I'm just going to lightly go over the surface. And when I file down the nail, what I'm doing is really trying to smooth out that transition from the center of the nail to the free edge. So when you see people file over top like this, they're basically trying to make sure that the gel tapers nicely into the free edge. I call this the bullet. It looks like you've got the apex in the center, but then it gets really, really nice and refined towards the free edge of the nail, and you get that perfectly smooth curve down the nail. Trust me, filing takes a lot of practice. It took me years to really refine my process and to actually understand how to achieve what I was looking for. So don't worry if you're not able to replicate this from day one. I've taken lots of classes on shaping and an application to get to the point where I am. But filing honestly has a purpose. Everything with filing has a purpose. So think about what you're doing. Think about what you're trying to remove. Think about what you're trying to file or smooth. Don't just go into it thinking like, oh, I'm just going to start filing away. You really want to concentrate on what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to take product off? Are you trying to leave product there? What area are you trying to thin? And then also the way that you file, you can see I'm rocking back and forth a little bit. This allows me to keep the nail nice and curved. I'm going to try and show you the finger down the barrel. This is a little bit difficult because I don't want to break off my client's finger. But if you can see, once I get this focused on the finger, if I look at it down the barrel, you can see that I'm trying to create where it's thin on the sidewalls and it's got a concentration of product in the center. So going back to that mohawk idea, we want to keep the product concentrated in the center of the nail and then thin on the sidewalls. And from the side, we want to do the same thing, thin at the cuticle and the free edge and concentrated in the center. So I can rock back and forth while I'm filing like this so that I don't create a flat shape on the top of the nail. I want to maintain that curve both down the barrel and also on the side. So you can see it also curves. If we look at it from the side, the free edge is nice and thin. So really think about that while you're filing. Think about what you're trying to achieve. File with purpose is absolutely something that we say in the nail industry. Filing with purpose is very important. Because sometimes when you see videos like this, you just see people filing away and you don't really understand what they're doing. And so it's very easy to create bad habits where you just pick up a file, start going to town, and you might take off more product and, waste product. So by filing with purpose, we're able to smooth the nails, but we're also not wasting all of that application time or all of that product that we applied. We're able to really refine the shape and also maintain all the work that we just did during our application. So I just want to smooth this a little bit more so it's got a nicer transition. And honestly, the free edge, we want it to be no thicker than a credit card. When you feel like your nails are thick, it's usually because the free edge is super thick. And most of the strength actually comes from the apex in the middle of the nail. So we want to maintain most of the product in the center of the nail. So again, just going through, you'll notice I do the sides and I thin out the cuticle area, but I kind of leave most of the gel alone in the center. That's because I really want that gel to stay in the center. And then I can lightly go through and just make sure that everything is perfectly smooth. So again, filing over the top, make sure that free edge is nice and thin. And I'm not really filing the free edge right now because I'm going to do that at the very end of this manicure, but if you do have a little bit of gel that's sticking out on the free edge, you can absolutely file that at this time. So any areas where I see a little bit of thickness, I'll take that down. So I'm going to dust these off, and then we can actually go right into our color application. All right, so today I'm going to use this really pretty, it's kind of a semi-sheer gray color. It's like a taupey gray. And before I get started, what I like to do is take the lid that has a little bit of gel on it and my brush. And I'm just going to work a little bit of product into the bristles of my brush. I call this kind of like warming up my brush. Especially if your brushes have been sitting there for a minute, I like to just get a little bit of product worked into the bristles, gets them flexible again. And then I can scrape off the back side and just pick up a bead on one side of my brush. If you have not watched my video about how to apply gel polish like this with a pot and a brush, I really recommend you watch my gel polish manicure video. I explained a lot about brush angle and how to really get that perfect application when you're not using bottled gel polish. But you can use any style of gel polish. I like to use potted gels. I find it gives me more control, and I can use them for both art and full color. But if you like to use bottled gel polish, you can do this the same way with bottled gel polish, whatever you prefer. So I'm just going through adding a nice cleanly applied first thin layer. You want the gel polish to be thin where it's not, going to be lumpy, but you also don't want it to be paper thin where it's not going to have enough color or enough product to cure properly. So I go through and I just kind of finesse the product to get a semi-even coat. It's going to be a little bit translucent on this first layer, but I want to try and apply it smoothly and also make sure that there's enough gel on there to give it, enough to cure with. All gels shrink, so we want to make sure that we have enough product on there to make the curing process successful. You can also use a wetting layer technique for this if you really want more control. You can apply it paper thin and then go back and add a little bit more, just like I did with the base coat and the builder gel. So depending on how much product you pick up, you might need to pick up a little bit more. And I try to keep the back side of my brush as clean as possible. This allows me to get close to the cuticle area and the side walls without getting anything on the skin, and the gel just stays on the actual nail itself. So you'll see me scrape off excess as I work. And I do pull back the skin a little bit. So I use my other fingers to really pull back the sidewalls if needed. This client doesn't have really puffy sidewalls that block the sidewall of the nail. But if you need to, you can pull back the skin a little bit. Now, you can cure those 4 nails if you want to. I'm just going to go into the thumb. This gel polish doesn't move a lot, so I don't really feel like I need to flash cure those other nails or fully cure them. I'm just going to show you the thumb right away, and then we'll cure everything at the end. So I'm going to zoom in here so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing up close, because I know a lot of you are probably thinking, oh my gosh, how do I get so close to the skin, or how do you apply it? So let me see if I can get this focused here, this close up, and I'll show you guys. There we go. Okay, so you can see the nail looks really dry. It doesn't look cute right now, but that's what we want. We want the nail to be dry. We want the surrounding skin to be dry. Gel likes dry. So I put a little bit of product on my brush, and you can see I put it kind of in front of my brush, and I bulldoze it up to the cuticle area like that, and then I pull down. So you can see how close I can get. And if I just gently pull the skin back, just gently, I'm not peeling the skin back really hard. I'm just barely pulling it back with my thumb. I can lift that skin a little bit so I can see, and on the side while I do the same, I kind of pull the skin back just a little bit. It allows me to see what I'm doing, and I can get really, really, really close without touching. Same thing on the other side. That's why I like the nails to be really dry, because the difference between the shiny gel and the dry nail really allows me to see what the heck is going on, where I have gel, where I don't. I can add a little bit more. It's so hard to keep this stuff focused when I'm this close up, but you guys can basically see what I'm doing now. Okay, so just as close as you can get it. If you touch the skin a little bit, or if you feel like it's gonna run while it's curing, just clean it up with an orange wood stick, or I'm just using the scraper part of my cuticle pusher that I've got here, and I can just really cut that extra product out. Make sure it doesn't touch the skin. I want to get the gel polish as close as possible without touching. There we go. Okay, so all of these nails are cured. Now I'm going to apply a second coat. And as I mentioned, this particular color is meant to be semi-sheer. It's meant to be something that you can build up the color depending on how opaque you want it to be. So you'll notice that it does look semi-sheer on that first coat. And then on the second one, I'm going to add more product to get it to the opacity that I want. I can tap a little bit on the free edge here. And I've got a little bit of bulk on the side, so I'm just going to pull that down. Now, again, if you want to, in between nails, you can flash cure. This depends on the gel polish brand you're using, because some gels do not do well with flash curing. And it's something that you're just going to have to experiment with your own products. I personally like to use 100% gel products. I don't like to use hybrids where they're kind of a nail polish gel mix. So all the gels that you see me use on my channel are really meant to be able to be used however I want them, right? They're 100% gel. It allows me to flash cure if I want to. It allows me to use them for full color, for art, whatever I want. And so I really prefer to work with gels that give me flexibility. I'm not really into the nail polish style gel polish, but if you like that, or if that's what you own, don't worry about it. Follow the instructions that are on the bottle. Definitely follow the instructions that are provided by the manufacturer. And if flash curing doesn't work for your product, then just apply it really thinly and cure all the nails at the same time. So you'll notice also as I go through the nails, depending on how opaque it is, I do like to add a little bit extra product on those dominant nails. I do that kind of just instinctually as I move through, because I do want the thumb, pointer, and middle finger to have a little bit extra product, especially on the free edge and those inner corners where they get worn out really easily. And I'm just using a really, really light pressure to float that color over the nail. Some of you are probably wondering why I didn't use base coat before I put the color on. Gel can actually be applied directly onto finish filed gel. So since we did base coat on the natural nail, we did an overlay, and we finish filed the overlay, You can go right in with your color as long as they're clean and the dust has been removed. If I had not cleaned the nails also, if I knew my overlay was perfectly smooth and I didn't need to finish file anything, you can also apply your color directly on that tacky layer from your overlay. So there's a lot of options here. You don't have to use base coat all the time. The only time I use base coat is when I'm working on top of a product that is not compatible with my color gels. So like, let's say the client comes in from another salon, she's got acrylic on, and I'm going to do, a backfill with gel, and I'm going to put color on or something like that, or I'm going to do a repair or a color change. Then I will use gel base coat underneath my color. But 90% of the time doing this with my gels, you don't need to use base coat after you do an overlay. Now again, on the free edge and the corners, I want to make sure there's quite a bit of product, and I cure those completely. Okay, so now that the nails are completely cured, I'm going to put my top coat on. I am going to use a non-wipe top coat. Non-wipe top coats are kind of nice because then you don't have to clean the nails at the end. It's just one less step. But it just depends. There's definitely sacrifices that come with each formula. So if you want a product that doesn't have to be cleaned after it's cured, you might sacrifice something else. Maybe it yellows a little bit more. Maybe it doesn't self-level as nicely. There's different characteristics to every single formula on the market. So just find the one that you really like. If you like, the formula that has to be cleaned just because the texture is different, more power to you. I just like to use different products on this channel so you guys can see how different things work. So I just go through, apply a nice thin coat. I've already, in this situation, I've already created the shape and the strength with the overlay. I've already done 2 coats of color, so I don't need a lot of top coat. I just want to create, a nice shiny finish. And if you get a little bit of dust or grit in your top coat, just keep pulling it and it'll pull it right out. But the top coat in this situation can just be nicely thinly applied because I've already done everything that I need on the previous layers. So again, pulling back the skin a little bit so I can get close to the sidewall without touching. And then once I've got the gel on there, then I can kind of float it over and make sure it's nice and smooth. I do like to tip the finger down slightly while I'm doing it close to the cuticle area. This makes sure that the gel runs away from the cuticle. And then I kind of tip the finger up as I get closer to the free edge. So that's why I'm kind of pointing the finger away from you on camera, is so that the gel can get close to the cuticle without touching. And then checking your reflection, looking at it, making sure that it looks nice and even. And if you touch anywhere accidentally, just scrape it off before curing. Okay, so these are nice and smooth. And if there's any place where you feel like it's touched or it's a little bit thick, you can scrape that off right before you cure the nails. Okay, so I cured the other 4 just to make sure those were done. And then now I can turn the hand to the side and I can do the thumbs. Again, when you're turning those 4 fingers to the side to do the thumb, if the gel isn't cured on those other fingers, it's going to move a little bit. So that's why I like to do the 4 fingers, cure them in, get them locked, and then I can go forward with the thumb separately. And I can push back the skin on the free edge so that I can really cap the free edge of the nail. Check that it's smooth and then cure. All right, so I'm waiting for these nails to cure. I'm going to use Daddy oil. I really love this cuticle oil. It's really nice. And since I don't have to clean these nails because there's no inhibition layer with this top coat, I'm just going to go through the nails and see if there's anything I need to fix. Sometimes there's little pieces of grit or there's little pieces of fuzz or something touched. So I can finish file at a 45-degree angle, which is kind of like undercutting the natural nail underneath. I don't want to do it super perpendicular because I don't want to take off the gel too much, but I just very, very, very lightly just go and kind of undercut the natural nail. This really makes it so that it looks nice and it gets rid of any of those little pieces that might be sticking out on the free edge or anywhere where it might have attached to the skin. So on thumbs and stuff, I like to gently just push the skin down and release anything that might be stuck together and then just barely file. Then I can apply my cuticle oil. If you're working in a salon setting, I highly recommend you use a dropper. That way you're not contaminating your cuticle oil by touching the skin. But this is just the one that I have is a brush. All right, so I really like to rub, and I like to use this as an opportunity to check my work. So I rub the cuticle oil in while I'm talking to my client. I check, the cuticle area. I rub on the free edge to see if there's any rough spots. And I really like to massage the cuticle oil in, help it absorb into that skin that was so dry the whole entire manicure. You can also do a hot towel after this if you want to really help the oil soak in. You can do a lotion massage, you can do scrub, whatever you want to do now that you have the gel applied. You can go crazy with paraffin, whatever you want to do for your client or for yourself. But I like to just rub in the cuticle oil, get the skin re-moisturized. You can see how beautiful it looks now. And then I'm going to take off the excess oil just with a clean, dry wipe. I just polish the skin a little bit, get off all the excess oil so it's not globbed on there. That way the client can actually use their hands again. But you can see how nice the skin looks. It looked so horribly dry before, but that's what we need while we're applying our gel polish. So I like to just check there's no big excess on the inside of the hand, on the outside. And just polish. They're going to have a little bit of oil on the surface, so they're not going to be as shiny as they will be when the client washes their hands. But there you have it. We just did an overlay, and next week I'm going to show you guys how to actually change the color. So here are the finished nails, and now you've got a protective layer on your client's nails that you're going to easily be able to change the color next time. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next week.